The former presidential candidate turned DNC chair turned lobbyist, Howard Dean, is now back in the news because he has some insight as to what the Democratic Party should do if they want to be successful in 2018 and 2020. Now, at face value, if you listen to him, you might think that he's on our side, and when I say our, I mean millennials, because he thinks that his generation should get the hell out of the way and allow our generation to take over politics. But even though this might sound reasonable at face value, really, there's a more nefarious plan behind what Howard Dean is currently saying. Now, we're going to talk about that, but first of all, I'll show you the clip and tell you specifically why I take issue with what he's saying.
So let's talk about, Howard, where the progressive movement is right now. As somebody who has represented it and been invested in it from the Women's March forward, it has been a year of energy for progressive groups. How does that translate going forward? Can they keep up that energy?
Well, I actually think the progressives are in the process of informally taking over the Democratic Party. I think the country has moved to the left. It's shocking to me, but a majority of Americans think Medicare for all is a good idea. I mean, and that, frankly, Bernie gets a lot of credit for that. I don't think he's going to be the next nominee, but he could be. Because I'm very much for somebody who's younger. I think my generation's got to get the hell out of politics, start coaching, and start moving up this next generation, who are more, I think, fiscally sane. Neither Republicans or Democrats can claim they're fiscally responsible anymore after what the Republicans just did in this tax bill. And this generation, this young generation, is going to pay for that if we don't get the hell out of the way.
So that means no Bernie Sanders, no Joe Biden, for example?
They may well run. I'm going to be supporting somebody who's younger in the next generation, who I don't know who it is yet, but I'm going to...
I was going to say, do you have anybody in mind yet? It's too early.
I think there's a bunch of people that are terrific, and there's more people that aren't on my list who are terrific. Chris Murphy from Connecticut. Kamala Harris, of course. Kirsten Gillibrand. There's Eric Garcetti from Los Angeles, a bit of a long shot, but Trump's broken the rules. Now mayors may have a shot. And there's tons of other young people. We were joking before the show, Sam and I think, or this segment, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 17 people running.
Yeah. Look a little bit like the Republican primary last time around,
hopefully there won't
right?
be any people who are just, in there for the fun of it.
Okay, so, we'll start this off by saying that not 100% of what he said is incorrect. So he states here that progressives are in the process of taking over the Democratic Party. This is correct. I agree with that because, yes, we are indeed trying to take over the Democratic Party. He also states correctly so that the country is moving left. But it's not just that the country is moving left on issues like Medicare for all. The country has always been relatively progressive when you look at the issues. So if you ask people whether or not they feel as though they're conservative or liberal, a lot of people will say they're conservative, others will say moderate. Very few people would probably identify as progressive. But when you actually ask them specifically about policies, then there's no question about it. They are progressive, and they're getting more progressive. So he's right about that. He also states that, a majority of Americans now think Medicare for all is a good idea, which he credits Bernie Sanders for. Again, this is true. But where Howard Dean really started to go off the rails here was when he talked about how he's very much for someone that's younger. He thinks his generation has got to get the hell out of politics. Now, my first instinct when I heard him say that was, I don't care at all how old you are. You could be 452. I would vote for you so long as you're actually championing progressive ideas. Now, what he's saying, he's not really saying this explicitly, but he's basically telling us, I don't want Bernie Sanders to ever be president. That's why I'm taking this stance, this seemingly pro-millennial stance, when he doesn't tell you that if he really was a friend to millennials like he wants us to think he is, then he should be championing the politician who agrees with us politically. And that individual, of course, is Bernie Sanders, Nina Turner. But when he talked about his choices and who he would support as a potential Democratic nominee in 2020, he didn't say Bernie. He listed Chris Murphy as one of the options. Now, Chris Murphy is a corporate sellout. He listed Kamala Harris, who is the establishment's favorite, and even though she is at least taking the right position on a lot of progressive issues like Medicare for all, the problem with Kamala Harris is that she's suspect because all of the Democratic Party's major donors are lining up behind her, and she's taking a lot of money from large multinational corporations. That's a huge red flag. We were duped over by someone who pretended to be progressive before, Barack Obama, and you better believe that we're not going to fall for that again. Now, additionally, he listed Kirsten Gillibrand, who again, she's another individual like Kamala Harris, who's getting on the right side of the issue. She co-sponsored Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. However, she is no friend to progressives. And he also mentioned Eric Garcetti, who I admittedly don't know too much about to really make a judgment on. But what he's doing is he is trying to pretend like he's on our side, but yet he's trying to suggest that a younger candidate like Kamala Harris or Kirsten Gillibrand would be preferable for millennials just because of their age. But millennials, if you truly want to represent us, Howard, then you would realize that we couldn't care less about age or a politician's aesthetic in any way, shape, or form. All we care about is the policy ideas that they're championing. That's all we care about. That's it. That is it. It's as simple as that. We're pretty easy to please, I think. So if you think that we're going to reject someone who's old, like Joe Biden, for example, just because of his age, well, you're wrong. I don't not support Joe Biden, and I won't support him in 2020 because he's old. I don't support Joe Biden because he's a corporatist, and there's a lot of articles showing that he's positioning himself as the anti-Bernie Sanders. Well, if you are positioning yourself as the anti-Bernie Sanders, then you are anti-Democratic Party base, because Bernie Sanders is talking about policies that the Democratic Party's base wants. So to me, even though this may seem like a benign thing to assert and say, well, I'm in favor of younger people taking over, it's really nefarious, because what he's actually saying without saying it is that he wants a corporatist to be in control of the Democratic Party. And he's already winning this battle. Corporatists are still in control of the Democratic Party, even if it's the case that we're fighting to take over the party. The DNC is controlled by Tom Perez. We have Chuck Schumer as the Senate Minority Leader. We have Nancy Pelosi as the House Minority Speaker. Corporatists are in control of the Democratic Party, and that has yet to change. But what millennials actually want to do is have a political revolution where we all come together and actually push for progressive policy ideas. It's not like this is something that's pie in the sky, because it's been done before. We did this during the New Deal era. Nobody would question the New Deal because they knew they would get obliterated during the next election if they tried to go after any of the reforms that FDR implemented. That's what we want again. We want Medicare for all. We want strong unions. We want a $15 an hour minimum wage at a minimum. We also want criminal justice reform. We want to end all of the wars. We want corporations and billionaires and millionaires to actually pay their fair share. These aren't unpopular ideas. These aren't ideas that are only shared among millennials. These are ideas that the overwhelming majority of the American people want. So if you really are trying to get on our good side, Howard Dean, you're going about this the wrong way. And if you really want to show us that you care about millennials, then you would endorse Bernie Sanders for 2020. But we all know Howard Dean is a corporatist. He's now a lobbyist, and he would never do something like that. In fact, he was a Clinton surrogate in the 2015 or 2016 election, but he spoke out in Hillary Clinton's favor a lot in 2015, and he smeared Bernie Sanders at every chance he got. So Howard Dean is no friend to us. He's a fake friend. And Howard, I'm sorry, but we're on to your bullshit.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.